Welcome, adventurers! You've made it to the Wind Down, the live stream at the end of the Geekverse. It's a chill place to hang out here as the sun sets on another day. We're here to have a little chat, reflect on the day's successes, and prepare for a better tomorrow. So settle in with your favorite beverage this evening.
May I tempt you with a cup of chamomile?
Why, thank you, Dory. I would love a mug of tea this evening, but perhaps you would rather have some coffee, though I do recommend a decaf this late in the evening. Or perhaps maybe a cold brew is more your style.
Oh, no, thank you, Dory. A little red wine. For me, I think.
Sounds like an excellent choice, Gandalf. Whatever you want, it's yours. Could I offer you a bourbon, a martini, an old-fashioned, or something perhaps a little stronger? Ugh. Well, I mean, if that's really your thing, then okay, but I hope we can find something a bit better than that.
Romulan ale. Why, Bones, you know this is illegal.
I only use it for medicinal purposes.
All right, now we're talking. I'm Heath, and I'll be your host. Welcome to my home. Come one, come all. Writers, artists, sculptors, storytellers, board gamers, streamers, dungeon masters, fans of sci-fi, fantasy, geeks of all kinds. Whatever your fandom, you have a place here. For soon it will be time for another long rest so that we can recover our hit points, our spells, and our abilities, so we'll be ready to fight on for another day tomorrow. But first, we all need a little time to reflect. Because you've survived another long, perilous day of wilderness treks, dungeoneering, and random encounters. And that's worth celebrating. Let's tell the tale. It's time for the Wind Down. It will improve your life. It really will. Give it a chance. Here we go. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Wind Down. A few minutes late, I know, but stuff has been going on. Been trying to take care of business today. Emails coming in on different projects. Lots of stuff going on. So had to take a few extra minutes today. I really appreciate your being here with me and waiting. Good to see you all. Welcome to the Wind Down. What's the first order of business? Well, the first order of business is, of course, breathing and sipping. A couple of things to celebrate today. So actually, I'm back with a little bit of wine tonight. So I'm not alcohol-free completely today, having a little glass of wine tonight. But that's okay. I think everything's going. Still have a little bit of dinner left, actually. But glad everyone's here. So we were having a little bit of controversy this morning over whether we should be breathing and then sipping, or sipping and then breathing. So which one was the right answer? Well, we don't want to choke, right? So I tell you what, let's sip. I think we always sip and then breathe. Let's breathe and then sip. So let's breathe in and out. And in and out. Deep inhales, complete exhales. And now, once you're completely done breathing, let's sip. Ah, that's much better. That's much better. I can feel it. Can you? When you breathe and sip, I can. Like says, breathing and sipping is right. Yes, don't breathe and sip. Breathe and then sip. We don't want to cause the choking. So sip, right. Sip, swallow, and then breathe. Right, yes. Make sure that you complete the sipping or the breathing before you begin the other task. Right, yes. All right. So why are we here? Well, we are here to reflect on the day. And I hope you had a good day. I hope it was fantastic. We're going to celebrate our successes. And then if we didn't quite have the day we wanted to have, then we want to be able to figure out why and commit ourselves to having a better tomorrow. Like I said, I hope you're having a great day. If you have questions to talk about, you're welcome to put them in the chat. I'll be taking questions. So if you have questions, please put them in there. inner lights ahead of us. GD, good day, good day, right? We have a number of abbreviations here. One of them is good day. We want to know one of two things. GD, were you GD today? Was it a good day? Or were you wit? Good day or wit? GD in the chat if it was good day. WIT, wit. If you will improve tomorrow. Will improve tomorrow. That's wit. I'm going to put GD in the chat. GD in the chat. Good day in the chat. I didn't quite make it everything that I wanted to make it. I didn't quite get there. Not quite. But I was very close. Had lots of good thoughts today. Had lots of ideas. I continue to have great ideas about how to actually move projects forward. So I was able to do that. So I'm GD in the chat. If you're GD in the chat, put that in the chat. That means good day. You can add something to it if you like. Add something to it. GD, for reasons we'll celebrate here on the chat. But you don't have to. Just put GD in the chat. It was a good day. We're focused on having a good day here. Did you have a random encounter? We can talk about that too. Did something strange happen to you today? Or did you have some type of weird situation come up? That's a random encounter. And we can talk about any random encounter that you might have had. Let me share about my day. So that was the first. Good day in general. Good day or will improve tomorrow. Let me bring up the auxiliary camera. See it over here. You can see how my day went. So I want it to be a good day. There we go. Auxiliary camera has been activated. We are now in the notebook phase of the evening. So this is I'm sharing how my day went. Your day could be something completely different. You need to make your day what your day is supposed to be. I weighed in this morning. Part of my goals is losing weight. Gained way too much weight. Sitting here gaining too much weight. Got to lose weight. I weighed in this morning at 184.3 pounds. I told you, it's not necessarily good to track your weight every day. I am, but I'm not getting overly concerned if weight goes one way or another. I was up, I was down, and then I was way up over the last couple days. I thought it would come back, though. So I was at 184.3 pounds today. So that's progress. Implementing a system to lose weight. You might need to lose weight. You might need to gain weight. If so, don't worry about the goal. You know which direction you need to move. Implement a system to move in that direction. That's all we're talking about here. Implement the system. You might be the perfect weight. If so, then fantastic for you. Don't have to work on weight. I need to lose weight. I've got another friend who wanted to gain weight. Needed to gain weight. So whatever works for you, whatever you need to do, we're going to move in that direction. That's what we're doing here. AF. That's alcohol free. I'm trying to reduce alcohol because I am trying to lose weight, and it's easier when we're not drinking alcohol. I found it's easier for me when I'm not drinking alcohol. But I didn't quite make AF today. I had something to celebrate, had a beer earlier, and so I'm also having a glass of wine this evening. So that's reduced consumption, especially after a couple of days. So, all right, I'm not trying to eliminate it necessarily, but definitely trying to reduce it. I didn't quite make AF today. Maybe tomorrow. Tomorrow's another day. MBR. That's another one of our acronyms. MBR. So if you were AF and you were trying to be AF today, you can put AF in the chat. Or maybe SF. Maybe you're trying to be smoke free. So maybe you were SF in the chat. That could be. AF, SF, we'll celebrate. That's great. Put it in the chat. MBR. Next big thing is, were you MBR? MBR is, did you move your big rocks? Remember that during the morning grind, at the end of the morning grind each day, we take a look at our to-do list and we decide on what our big rocks for the day are going to be. And our goal between the end of the morning grind and the start of the evening grind is to move those big rocks. Did you move your big rocks today? Were you MBR? If you were MBR, put that in the chat. I was MBR. Check this out. I got all 3 of my big rocks done. I moved my big rocks. My email was zeroed. I got all the way to the end of my inbox. Some more emails may have just come in. I was hearing some more. Email is eternal. But I needed to get my email to 0. So I answered all of my email. And there were some important emails in there regarding the Terra Tiles manufacturing and also the uh, action figures. Might have some more action figure information tomorrow. But I got some important pictures and things like that for the action figures. Trying to plan a video conference with the manufacturer. So that's going on. So that was important. I had my meeting with Brianna. I count that also toward my core creative time because we were talking about stories, we were talking about business, we were talking about advancing ourselves. She had some great successes today. She actually had completed yesterday, she completed the first draft of a screenplay she's been working on for a long time. And she and I have been discussing it, and she said that yesterday she completely finished the first draft of that screenplay. And she said it doesn't feel like a first draft because it's more advanced than that. But it is actually the first complete read through of the draft. I wish we were together. I would have taken her out to dinner or something like that. She's in Colorado and I'm down here because that was a reason to celebrate. So we had that going on. So congratulations, Brianna. I don't know if she's watching. She's doing great things. So I was talking with her. We had that meeting. And then I finished prepping Rules 0.7 for the game. And I posted those. I posted those in Discord shortly before the live stream began. If you are not part of Discord, I'm going to put a 1-hour Discord invite link in there so that you can take a look at the Ravenkeep Discord channel. It's a really great place. I grow more and more fond of the Discord every day. We're developing a really great community there for people who want to get things done and are trying to accomplish things and want to be constructive. That's what it's all about. So I didn't get to send out the ritual rules by email. Probably do that tomorrow, but that wasn't part of my big rocks. I just wanted to get them done so they'd be ready to send out. And I posted them in Discord so people can see them and they'll go out tomorrow. So I did my big rocks. I was MBR, so I got my big rocks done. Was I CTA? CTA. If you were MBR, put it in the chat. Did you get your big rocks done? If you were MBR in the chat. Let's celebrate. All right, celebrate. MBR in the chat. What about being CTA? Were you CTA? I was CTA today. CTA is heeding the call to action or the call to adventure. Call to adventure. If you heeded the call to adventure, that means you got up at the time you wanted to get up in the morning, and then you immediately started tackling whatever task it was that you wanted to tackle. For me, I was getting up at 4:45. I was up at 5 o'clock. I posted that to Twitter and also in the Discord. If you did, you can tag me on Twitter or you can also post in the Discord. Let everybody know that you heeded the call to adventure. You were up this morning. That was our first anchor point during the day. You heeded the call to action. I did. I'm going to put a check mark right there. My last item, if you did that, put CTA in the chat. CTA in the chat if you heeded the call to adventure today and were up at the time you wanted and were tackling the tasks you wanted to do. What time is up to you? What time is up to you? You choose what time. It's the time that works for you in whatever time zone you're in. And the task is up to you as well. What time do you want to be up? And what task do you want to be working on? If you were CTA, put it in the chat. So let's see what's going on with Inner Light over here in the chat. Well, okay, we got to go up. We've got some celebrations here. Inner Light says, got into a conversation with my mother about old family recipes. So that was kind of like a random encounter. Well, that's really important information, to be able to share information like that. Because, if you don't have those conversations, one day you're with your grandparents or with your parents, one day they will be gone. We don't like to think about that, but that's true. So have the conversations you want to have and wish you would have if they were all of a sudden gone. Family recipes, stories that they have. Make sure you get those. Yes, absolutely. Thanksgiving is coming up. It's just around the corner, 2 days away? So that's a great time to do that with family members. If you would like to get additional information or need to have conversation with your family members. Inner Light also says, I made mashed potatoes for the meal for Thursday. So Thanksgiving, here we go. I got to prep for Thanksgiving tomorrow. Faced my dragon a bit and got some paperwork done for the dragon and researched Shopify a bit more. Excellent. I saw you just posted a Shopify question in the Ravenkeep Discord. So I don't remember what it was. I just saw that it came up as a notification on my phone. So we will see what that is. And then also got an hour of playtest and game design in. Fantastic, fantastic. I read the material you sent me on the RPG. Actually, I didn't read it completely, but I evaluated, looked at it. Innerlight's been working on an RPG and is very advanced in it. Got great layout as well. Here's something interesting that's coming up here. I like your GeoMines videos. I'm learning ArcGIS. That's pretty incredible. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. That's pretty wild that somebody is now here on this channel as the result of GeoMines. Thank you. You know, GeoMines is another channel that I have here on YouTube. I haven't uploaded anything there in years, but I used to teach geography at the college level at universities, and I created a bunch of videos about geography and geographic information systems, and I put them up on the GeoMines YouTube channel. And I'm so glad. I still see sometimes people commenting and saying how useful they are, and I really appreciate that. I'm glad that that's the case. I'm glad they are still helping people, and I am very glad that you're here with us on the wind down. This is very different than geography and ArcGIS. Very different, but I am so glad you're here. Inner Light says, chiseled through big rocks. Wonderful. Chiseled through big rocks. Up at normal time. That was good. Excellent. Wonderful. My third option here, or excuse me, my fourth checkbox is, was I WR? Were you WR? WR is watch rings or whatever equivalent you might have. I'm on the iPhone. You could be on the iWatch, Apple Watch. You might be on something else. Now is a good time if you need to update your goals, either back them down so there's something that's actually manageable so you can do them and get energy and then build back up, or if you need to increase them, now's a good time. So now it's time. Did you achieve your watch ring goals? I did. All three of them right here. So I was WR in the chat. If you were WR as well, I was WR going out. I should post all of these things. I was MBR, posting that, and I was CTA. As far as my time goes, I didn't have a perfect day because I missed my core creative time by a block of 25 minutes. And that's because clearing email, getting to email 0 took longer than I was expecting. There were a lot of emails to go through and a lot of important things to write back, especially regarding action figures and Terratiles manufacturing. So getting to email 0 took longer. That's why I've got more time here in Ravenkey. So I didn't get to put it over there in core creative time before the wind down started. So I missed that. So a very good day. GD, good day, but not a perfect day. I don't get my check boxes. So that tomorrow's another day, my blue check mark. Maybe tomorrow I'll get the blue check mark. Of course, I'm going to go ahead and mark this because I will have done more YouTube by the end of this stream. So that was my day. That's my life by the numbers. That's what happened to me. I hope that your day was successful as well. And if it wasn't, well, we will do better tomorrow, right? Oh, let me take that down. Put that right here. We will do better tomorrow. So if you were just coming in, we've been celebrating victories. Let us know if you had victories today. Put it in the chat. If you had random encounters, please put that in the chat. Would love to hear and would love to shout that out. We are about to move on to some of the things I've been thinking about today. And these are some things that I really like to talk about. But hopefully the conversation will go well. I am feeling a bit tired this evening, so I don't know how long we will go tonight. I might have to take a meeting, online meeting with the action figure manufacturer tonight. I got to check my email before I go. In fact, let me check the email right now. Let's see. Oh, I do. I'm going to have a meeting tonight about the action figures after this wind down stream. Let me say, okay. I am online live right now, but we'll meet you after the stream. So that's very exciting. I'm very excited about that. I'm tired. There's been a lot going on. We'll be in touch. But I'm very excited about that. And so I want to take that meeting. So might have some more stuff here. Let's see. 7Xmas7 says, can you tell us about your Terra tiles? How did you start that? How did I start that? The idea came together in a couple of different ways. So the Terra tiles, let me start over. So how did we start Terra tiles, or how did we think of the Terra tiles idea? Well, there were a couple of different lines of thought that kind of came together in order to create Terra tiles. And I suppose the main genesis of the idea in my mind was that I was in college. I was an undergrad at the time, and there was a gaming store. It was kind of an old school type gaming store that was on my way from my grandparents. I was living with my grandparents when I was an undergrad. From the grandparents to the university, and I would frequently stop at that gaming store most of the time on my, if it was on my way home, not going there early in the morning, but on my way home, I would stop at that gaming store. And like I said, it was a rather old school kind of gaming store. There were a lot of old school kind of war gamers in that store. And they were getting ready to play Johnny Reb. That's a Civil War game. And, we should also look at war games on the morning grind. I'd love to look at Johnny Reb some. I've got that someplace. But I remember they were getting ready to play this Civil War game called Johnny Reb, and they were creating a whole terrain system for them to play Johnny Reb on. And Johnny Reb uses small miniatures, like it may be miniature agnostic, like 10 millimeter or 15 millimeter or something like that, but they're small. And so they were using the GHQ hexes. Am I saying that right? Let me make sure that I'm saying that right. GHQ terrain hexes. Yes, GHQ from GHQ Models. They had a bunch of those styrofoam hexes, and they were making this really incredible modular terrain system. But the tiles are very small. They were hexagons, but they were very small. But that was okay because the miniatures were very small, and so it would also take hundreds of these hexagons that had multiple terrain levels. If you look up the GHQ terrain system with hexagons, you'll see the system and what you can do with all of them. And I thought that was really cool. But at the time, my brother and I had also been playing a lot of Warhammer Fantasy Battles with the much larger miniatures, the kind of standard Warhammer size miniatures, or the miniatures that we now typically play role-playing games and Dungeons and Dragons with, and things like that. And so I thought that this was a really cool thing that they were building, but that it would be really neat to be able to build out a whole board like this that was much larger. Now, it was larger because they covered an entire table. They still covered an entire table, but they did it with hundreds of hexes because it was so small. But I said, we really need to do this, but at a technically smaller scale. I teach geography, so what side the direction goes, but which way the scale goes. But much larger hexagons for our larger miniatures. And I tried for a long time at that point to create, or I made a large push toward creating hand-cut large styrofoam hexagons so that I could create a modular battlefield that was large for D&D or Warhammer Fantasy Battles. But cutting perfect hexagons, very challenging. So I gave up on it. You could buy from GHQ the small ones, but I didn't want the small ones for Warhammer Fantasy Battles or wargaming or fantasy gaming. And so I gave up on that project, and I thought, well, maybe someday there's be some other way to do this. Much later, several years later, my brother and I had the idea. My brother's name is Seth. Seth and I had the idea that we would do the War of Kings game. That was just a board game, a strategy board game that he and I developed. And that was, we said, hey, let's see if we can develop this, and if we can bring it to Kickstarter, get the game produced, and then get it out to everybody, and have the game to sell. So that's its own story. But the important part here is that we were successful at that. We designed a strategy war game of kingdom building. We marketed it. We put it on Kickstarter. We funded it. We had it manufactured. We went through global shipping. Then we went through, shipping it out ourselves. We packed all of them ourselves, did all of our fulfillment ourselves. And then we completed that project and we were like, okay, well, now what do we do? Because we had just thought about doing that for, one project. Our goal was just to do one project. But then we had all this knowledge. Now, see, this happens a lot. If you try to do one project, you know what you're going to have at the end of one project? You're going to have a whole bunch of knowledge that might enable you to launch a whole company. And we hadn't been thinking about doing a company or something like that. But after we had done War of Kings, we said, we've got all of this knowledge. Maybe we should use that knowledge to do something else. Now, what else were we going to do? We could develop another game, but developing another game takes a long time. And we started the development of Enchantress. That was the second game that my brother and I designed, which also did come to Kickstarter and is also available on Ravenkeep, by the way. There's still a few boxes left, very few boxes left. But anyway, development of an entirely new board game takes a while. So we were like, no, wait a minute. Is there anything else that we can make that we might be able to produce faster rather than having to develop a whole new board game and then go through play testing and development and all of that? So we could be going through that, but is there some other product that we could make? And I said, yes. I remembered my experience at that old school gaming store. And I said, you know what? I've got this idea. What we really need to do, because he and I played Warhammer, like we were saying, we should create a terrain system. We just need big terrain hexes that can be manufactured. So they're all perfectly the same size and all fit together. We'll have them manufactured. We should create a terrain system for our table and our Warhammer Fantasy battle games. And we would be able to do that without going through rules development. We got to do art. We got to get more art done. But we wouldn't have to go through rules development. We could be doing our Enchantress rules development while we're doing something else. So that's basically what we did. Seth was like, that sounds like a good idea to me. Let's develop Terra Tiles. And so we started while we were playtesting Enchantress and starting the development of Enchantress, not quite playtesting yet, but starting that development. We dove in and created Terra Tiles. And we brought the first set of Terra Tiles to Kickstarter and it funded. And then we did another set. And ultimately, he and I did 3 sets. There weren't a whole lot of them. Now they've been out of print. So I'm trying to bring them back because people have asked me about them. So I'm trying to bring them back in very limited quantities. But doing another printing of them because I know there are some people who want them and never got them. But that's why. That's the story of that. So thank you for asking that question. I hope that that was a good answer for you. So a kind of cool story, kind of learning how to do things, how to manufacture things, and how to start a business. And I've had extreme ups and downs ever since that point. But learning how to do something like that and getting a product made, that was really important. Inner Light says, "Grats on the action figures. Thank you. This action figures have been, they're so cool. They're so cool. They're one of the things that I really want to have for the Tales of Rabavania. I really want to have a line of action figures. Do not want to die without a line of action figures. So I'm making it, but they are not easy. They take a long time. I'm 18 months about into the action figure project. So Inner Light says there are 6-inch hexes out there too for the terrain. Yeah, there are several different types of terrain out there and some of them have done the hexes, but I don't think that many of them have done it the way that Terra Tiles does it. And I don't think that I've seen people do terrain setups like I did it when I created the 3D version. So if you look on the YouTube channel, I did a special series of videos on how to create a 3D modular set of hexagonal terrain using the risers, so you get elevation on that, using Terra Tiles and the risers. And it was a quick process, like a day's worth of work if you have all the materials sitting there, to create a really amazing board. And I wanted to create that for a long time, because that's the kind of methodology that those guys at that gaming store years and years ago were using to create the board their battlefield for the Civil War game. And I just applied those principles to the larger size Warhammer Fantasy Battles, even though that's not supported anymore. There hasn't been Warhammer Fantasy Battles in years, but that style game or your role-playing game. So I've done that, and I think it was a great system. I think it worked extremely well. It finally made exactly the board that I wanted to make, the whole terrain system that I wanted to make. So it finally got done. I want some more environments. That's another reason why I'm reprinting Terra Tiles. I want some more environments. But it was a great system and it's easy. I like things that are easy, that you can spend some time on, that you can enjoy making, but that on the whole are easy, so that you can spend something like an afternoon on something, get it done, have something nice, get it accomplished, and you're not struggling with for months and months. Because like the deal, they were flocking individual hexagons and everything like that. I mean, it took them weeks and weeks and months to create all of those hexagons. I mean, it looked beautiful for the Johnny Rep game. It looked amazing. But my thinking, especially today, is that, well, time's valuable. Come up with something that we could have that pushes, that gets us the terrain system we want without all of the hassle. That was it. So that might be coming back, the 6-inch, and there's a fan edition of that came out too. Cool. All right. Let me get to my notes here. I'm a bit tired. I got to do this meeting, but let's we talk about the philosophy of geekdom. What do you think about what is a geek? Because I've used that term on this channel. What is a geek? What does that term mean to you? Is it positive or negative? I, of course, mean it in a very positive way. I can talk about the philosophy of geekdom. But what is it that geekdom means to you? So I talk about the Geekverse and topics in the Geekverse. I think that would be an interesting topic to talk about. Because I'm sure that's also certainly been evolving. So what is that? Oh, let's see. Keith says, I think Inner Light was probably talking about Warhammer Fantasy Battles, that it may be coming back. Really? See, I'm so glad I'm doing this for another reason, is there's so much great information that comes out that, I don't know. I mean, I don't follow everything. I don't even pretend to be an expert in all of this or have all the latest news or any of that. But you're talking about Warhammer Fantasy Battles, that it may be coming back, and there's a fan edition that came out too. I think I was aware of different fan attempts, but that's interesting if it would be coming back. I saw what they were doing with Age of Sigmar, and I was like, well, it didn't really appeal to me. It might appeal to you, and that's perfectly fine. But after having been through Warhammer Fantasy Battles, I was like, Age of Sigmar, not so sure about it. And that's actually why I went to do A Song of Ice and Fire game, because that seemed a lot more like Warhammer Fantasy Battles. And I did like that, but I haven't gotten enough chance to play, and really, I was trying to get the nephews interested in it, but that hasn't really happened yet. But Keith has more information for us. Keith says Games Workshop is going to release the old world in the future. It sounds like they'll be bringing back Warhammer Fantasy Battles. Well, that's cool. That's something that I'll be checking out, and could be something we could be talking about on Morning Grind, because I would be interested in that. They kind of blew up or the world of Warhammer Fantasy Battles or something like that. And I understand that it wasn't as popular as Warhammer 40K. I never got into 40K. There were some miniatures that I really like, and even today, if I had a lot more time to just paint things, I would like to have armies of. The Praetorians, the Praetorian Guard, I really like in Warhammer 40K. I love their look. And also the Death Corps of Krieg. I would love to have an army of the Death Corps of Krieg. I'm a big fan of what used to be called the Imperial Guard, at least as far as 40K goes. But all of my wargaming with Games Workshop had to do with Warhammer Fantasy Battles when I was a kid. I played Bretonnia, and my brother played High Elves, and then later he also played a little bit of Skaven. We played a lot of battles on the kitchen table with that. I also loved Mordheim, and I played quite a bit of Mordheim, and I wish I had a complete box of Mordheim today, but that's one of the things that's been lost over time. Inner Light says they lost a lot of their classic customers when they went Age of Sigmar, so now they're trying to get them back. Well, I suppose I am the quintessential example of that, right? Like, so I kind of left after they went Age of Sigmar. Age of Sigmar, if they were to try to bring that back, well, I was just talking about that. Well, I would take a look again. Yeah, I would take a look again. There were a lot of fun times, I think, that were had. I mean, I know there were a lot of fun times that were had with Warhammer Fantasy Battles. So if that gets updated, that's definitely something we should look at on the Morning Grind. Check that out. Thank you so much for the info. That's really exciting to me. If that happens, that'd be exciting. Inner Light says, I was big into High Elves and then Chaos after that. My aunt played Chaos. Because she was often Zargon for us in Hero Quest. So it was only natural after that she played Chaos. Like I said, Seth played High Elves. I like High Elves. I would like to paint some High Elves. I would. I had a friend who played Dwarves as well. And then also a little bit of Wood Elves. There was a lot of Warhammer Fantasy battle games being played. Keith Crow says, my friend runs the YouTube channel Squarehammer and runs a lot of Warhammer Fantasy Battle tournaments. You should check his channel out. I will. Let me make a note of that. Where's my notes over here? Squarehammer? I am not familiar with that channel. But I am now. I will look that up. Thank you, Keith. All right. So, what do I talk about here? We were about to talk about geekdom. So let me get my thoughts going because I'm a bit tired. I was thinking about this and I was really excited about it today when I was on my walk. So let me get my windows in line here. Okay. So what is it that I mean by geekdom? And what is it that I mean by the Geekverse? What is geekdom to me and what is the Geekverse? Well, to me, one of the things that I like most about what I consider geek stuff is that people, well, let me rephrase that. Okay. I had all my thoughts straight this morning, but I can't get them straight right now. Too tired. Let me think. Okay. So what is geekdom and the Geekverse to me? So one of the things that I absolutely like most about what I would consider geekdom and geeks is that we like the things that we like and we're not ashamed of it. Right? And actually, now this is going to sound like I'm equating geeks and children, but I'm not. I'm going to explain here. But that's actually one of the things that I like most about children as well. When you are talking to a child, they'll like whatever they like. And why do they like it? Just because they like it, right? This particular book, this movie, this activity, whatever it is. They like it because they like it, and they don't have enough social awareness, right, to think, well, now what happens? Well, what will other people say if I like this, right? Whatever it is, this movie, this book, this fandom, whatever it is. They're not thinking in terms of what are other people going to think about me if I like this, right? They're just saying, I like this. And that's why one of the main reasons I love hanging out with like my nieces or nephews. Those are, the young children that I have around, right? Why do I like to go and play with them and hang out about them? Because they'll tell you, hey, come up to my room. Take a look at this, Uncle Heath. This is what I like. I've got this. Check out these stickers. I like this video game. I like this, whatever it is that I've got. Look what I got for Christmas. I've been playing with this. I like that. And so you go up and you listen to them talk. We lose that as we grow up. And I know I did. I'm talking about myself here. that there's some type of something that goes on in our heads, I think, that's, that society tells us as well, that, well, if you're going to grow up, then you have to no longer enjoy the kinds of things that you enjoy, and you have to focus on other things. Now, I want to be very clear here. You do have to grow up. Growing up is essential. It's no good to not grow up. It's no good to not grow up. But I think there is an over association with growing up and abandoning the things that you like, right? Or I think anyway. And I hate that. That happened to me. Of course, I've been into tabletop games and fantasy and that kind of stuff for a long time. But, when it came time to, well, now it's time to get a job, it's time to move on to a professional career, I even consciously thought, well, I guess it's time to leave all of these things that I like behind, right? Time to leave them behind, because now I've got to go, in that case, have a job as a professor. So that means that everything involved with gaming and fantasy and things like that is over. And so I even sold a whole bunch of games and things like that. And I regret that, because that was an over association, I think, of the professional with overruling the other kinds of things I like. Like, why did I think that being a college professor was incompatible with maintaining an interest in tabletop games? I did. I thought, well, time to give that up. And of course, then I got, for a while, I was very focused on that career. So, you don't really notice that, because I was like, or the other things that are gone, that are like, well, I've got to focus on, the profession, the career. I was completely involved in that. That was completely life. And that's fantastic. You can get a lot of work done when you're like that. But then later I realized, what? There's some things that are missing here in life. And those are things that, I used to like. Tabletop gaming, Star Wars, Star Trek, those kinds of things that I had deliberately given up. And I was like, wait a minute, could I get that back? Now, in my case, I took a rather extreme example of that, and then ended up choosing a different career and going a different direction, and kind of giving up the academic route, and then going into game development and starting my own company and being an entrepreneur, and then kind of embracing the kinds of things that I used to really love again, right? And so when I go to conventions, when I see people talking on YouTube, when I talk to just friends who are into the kinds of things that they are into, I get the kind of idea that, hey, this is what I like, whether it's Star Trek, whether it's Star Wars, whether it's tabletop gaming or role-playing games or Dungeons and Dragons or board gaming, or, the kinds of things that I'm considering kind of the Geekverse here. Especially like if I'm at Gen Con or Origins or things like that, here we are again, embracing the things that we like and not really caring about what other people think about that or say about that, right? And so it is sort of, embracing the kinds of things that you like without regard to the outside world. Well, I like, of course, some things have become more mainstream. We can talk about that. Star Wars, of course, became very mainstream. So there's that element too. So you could talk about that crossover, but that's not exactly my point here. But my point is that I don't think that the association of growing up, because growing up is very important. Growing up is very important. But I don't accept the association, the direct association between growing up and giving up the kinds of things that you love. Because there are a lot of things, movies, there's a lot of ways to have a career. If you like movies, if you like fantasy, if you like tabletop games, if you like board games, there are even a lot of ways to make livings in them. There's different amounts of money and varying degrees of money. Video games can potentially be very lucrative, things like that. So I like to embrace the idea that we don't have to give up our interests. We have to grow up. But we don't have to give up our interests. And so that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about a celebration of geekdom, that we can still love these things. We can still accomplish. Of course, obviously, I'm huge on productivity. I mean, what do we just go through and stuff like that? I want to accomplish. I've got certain things I want to accomplish in life. You want to, as you grow up, you've got to drive at those things. You need to make happen in life what you want to happen. But I'm completely rejecting here the idea that you have to give up the things that really bring you happiness and joy. Because what's life if you don't have happiness and joy? You can have an extremely successful professional career in something that makes you miserable. And I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that, right? That's the direction that I turned. I was like, these are the kinds of things that I enjoy. These are the kinds of things that I like talking about. That's why I started the morning grind, a month ago, less than a month ago. And this right here, there's certain things I enjoy talking about. So I'll talk about them with you. And we can still make incredible things happen and embrace the things that we like. That's what I'm talking about, geekdom and the Geekverse. Does that make sense? What do you think about that? Inner Light says, we're passionate about other worlds that sometimes exist only in our imagination. Yeah, I am. And right. Yes. Okay. So let me think about my thought here. So Inner Light says, we're passionate about other worlds that sometimes exist only in our imagination. But that doesn't mean that we should discount the impact that those worlds, we can say worlds here, I would also say stories in this regard. The impact that these stories can have on us. I know, and you can still see behind me that I've got stuff from He-Man. When I think about the kinds of things that I was very enthusiastic about and very interested in as a kid, He-Man, probably the earliest entry was He-Man. He-Man was a big one. But Star Wars, Star Trek, I think those were extremely positive influences on me. I watched a lot of, especially the original series, the original crew movies. I watched a lot of the original Star Trek, but also I got one of my prized possessions as a kid was the VHS of the original series movies, Captain Kirk and Spock and things like that. Watched those quite a bit. I also watched a lot of Next Generation. So those are very positive influences. And Star Wars as well was very positive. I would say those are three. Middle Earth and Middle Earth, because it's a tradition in my family that just before you are old enough to really read The Hobbit for yourself, you have The Hobbit read to you. So in my family, it's a family tradition that I've been trying to carry on with my nephews, that you are introduced to Middle Earth very early, right? And and then what you do with it after that is your own, but you're introduced to it very early. So I would definitely say that He-Man, Middle Earth, Star Wars, and Star Trek were huge influences on me, and I think extremely positive influences on me. So even though you're talking about making an imaginary world or something like that, well, you can't understate the influence that those things can have on people. And I want to have that same kind of influence and positive influence on other people. So, it's because, there are pictures of me, like old, Polaroid pictures or whatever on a young birthday or whatever, where I was getting my first He-Man action figures and then watched the TV show and all of that, right? But because I remember the positive impact that He-Man had on me, that is no small part, that it's a large part of why I want to develop the Tales of Rabavania and why I've been working on my own action figures. It's why that's exactly what has made me say, hey, you know what? Could I do the same thing? Could I create, this is a prototype of the action figure right here for the Tales of Rabavania. Could I create that and create the associated stories with that might have the same kind of positive influence, or even a more positive influence? I like that too, but the same kind of positive influence that I think He-Man had on me as a kid. Could I pass that on to, another generation? I would love that. See, that's one of the goals here. So whether it's that or whether it's the influence of Star Wars or Star Trek, we want those things to be positive. And, some people discount, can it be positive? But other people the same people who might discount positive influence will say, well, don't watch X media or Y media because it'll have a negative influence. And most people would agree that there could be negative influences of media, right? Oh, if you watch that, there could be a negative influence. Now, earlier this morning, we talked about you could take that to an extreme, and I talk about the satanic panic with Dungeons and Dragons or something like that. And, does it have that kind of effect? But certainly, if you're talking about exposing someone to culture or somebody reading some Shakespeare versus, some other thing that is not quite as good or is, terrible, when compared to Shakespeare, you would want somebody to read Shakespeare because it might have a positive impact on them. It could have a positive impact. And if they read something that's terrible, it might have a negative impact, right? So I want the stories that I create and the worlds that I create to have a positive impact on people like I've experienced. Because I think, so much of my identity, you probably tell by the things that I talk about here in the evening grind, the wind down or the morning grind, my life has been so impacted by those, right? And then I went away from those things, understandably, to do a professional career. But even then, that impact is still there. And we need to make sure that we continue that. A great way to have a fantastic impact on people is through stories. So, I've been around people who have dismissed fantasy worlds as, oh, that's just in your imagination. It's not something that you should really be serious about or that it's going to have an impact, but it does. Oh, it does. If you get around the right stories, the messages the right stories can send, the impact they can have on lives, incredible. I don't think you can discount that in any way. So that's my goal. That's what I would love to have happen. Inner Light is also agreeing. And also says, we do have to say, though, that if you are the only creator of a fictional world, if you try to grow up and leave it behind, it will find ways to interfere with that. Unless you completely refuse it, then it's gone forever. Yeah, that's true. And my journey in life has been a return to these things. Because the Tales of Rabavania, I developed this whole idea for the Tales of Rabavania came to me when I was in 6th grade. My earliest writings about Tales of Rabavania, I was writing a novel. I wrote it all freehand. It's all written out on a notebook by hand. That came to me in 6th grade. Now, the idea for Theophany came to me in high school. So just a few years later, we're talking about middle school and high school. I don't remember exactly when I had the first idea for Theophany. It might have been 10th grade. So those two ideas have been with me for a long time, and I had not developed them, right? I went on to undergrad and then went on to graduate school and so forth and kind of left that behind. There's a lot that goes on in graduate school, especially when you're trying to become a college professor. I was very focused on that. Then, of course, you get into the career thing. But even through then, it was in the back of my mind. One day I want to get back to doing Rabavania and Theophany, right? Those were still in the back of my mind always. I tried to do some stuff when I was a professor at the University of Illinois in the evenings. Of course, there's a lot going on as the professor. And I wrote a lot in Theophany, but not necessarily stuff that's great for world building, but not necessarily stories, but a lot of great world building stuff. And then other things happen, and then other things happen, and then other things happen. And I've mentioned before that it can be very difficult to orient your life so that everything is actually in order and you're actually able to do the things that you want to do. And that's what I've been trying to do ever since I decided that, well, I think I'll not be a college professor. I think I will try this other kind of career, which who knows what that's called. Something about being a creative entrepreneur. Worked in crowdfunding, using crowdfunding to try to create my projects and things like that for a while. Who knows what's happening now. But you're right, it nags at you. What Inner Light's saying here is absolutely right. It nags at you. I want to get these things done. It's a small list of things that have to do with these worlds that I want to get done, but I want to get them done. I will not be happy if I die and they are not done. So these ideas have come back. They've been with me ever since middle school and high school. Now they're going to get done. Now they are going to get done. And you had Castle Grayskull too, Inner Light says? I had Castle Grayskull. I had Castle Grayskull and Snake Mountain. What do you think about that? That was a big rant, right? I like I'm a big fan or of the idea of the influence of media. Want that to be positive. I want that to be positive. And I think that these stories and these worlds, I feel like could be my greatest impact. I could be wrong. It could end up being something else, or it could end up having no impact. But I'm not going to be happy until I have at least tried. And so that's what I have been trying to do for years, get to a situation where I can try to develop these. And it's not easy. Like I said, I've been working on those action figures. Like I decided, you know what? Now is the time. I'm going to start developing these Tales of Rabavania action figures. I'm now 18 months into that project, and we just are looking at, where we are with the prototypes with the manufacturer. So everything takes a long time. Keith says, I feel lucky that I've been able to have active hobbies and passions throughout my entire life. My career is separate from those passions in most ways. And that is also an excellent way to do it. I don't want to discount that at all. If you are somebody, because there is a huge cost. There is a huge cost to trying to make your hobby and your interest into something that is a career. There's a huge cost that comes to that. There is all of the business side of things that you have to do. If you think, hey, I love board games, or I love role-playing games, or I love video games. Okay, great. That's what I'm interested in. I'm going to make that into my career and my business, especially if you're trying to make it into your independent business. Well, remember that a business is something that's very different than just the enjoyment of the hobby. Right? All of a sudden, you are adding on a tremendous amount of stuff that has to do with business administration. I mean, we can go into all that. I mean, there's obvious, taxes and, all of your accounting and, all of the logistics that have to go along with your business and blah, 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 which can get in the way of your core creative time. And that's something that I fight with all the time. So I don't begrudge anyone. In fact, I think it's fantastic if you have those things separate, like you're talking about, Keith, here, where you've got, hey, I love these things over here, and I'm still involved with them and I do them, but I'm not trying to make them my whole career. My career is this over here. I do this stuff during the day. It makes enough money, and then I'm able to spend that money and spend the additional time on my hobby. I do not discount the idea that sometimes it is best to just leave hobbies. It's absolutely the case. You may enjoy them more just because you have a passion and just because it is your hobby. There are people who will tell you, well, you should start selling this. You should try to make this into a business. That's not true. That's not necessarily true. Because there's so much other stuff, and there's so many people who get involved in their hobby as a business and then stop enjoying the hobby, or don't have time for the hobby anymore. I mean, I guarantee you that if you try to start a board game publishing company in order to publish your own board games, the amount of time you spend playing board games is going to go down, right? The amount of time you actually spend playing board games is going to go down. And that's just reality. I'm sure it's very similar in other kinds of things. So what Keith is saying is also an extremely viable option and an important one, and not one to be discounted. Inner Light says, at the end of the electronic age, it will be the storytellers, role players, and board gamers who will be able to keep sane. Well, yeah, if we have the electronic collapse, we were talking about what we would do in the event if our computers and our internet and our power went down. That was a fun discussion on the evening rind one night. Yeah, that's true. I've thought about that too, that, if we were all stuck in my house, with my brother and my aunts and uncles and my nephews, well, we could have some candles, some oil lamps and things like that, and I've got enough board games and role-playing games to keep us entertained until we all die. I mean, for decades, there is no lack of entertainment in the board game and tabletop and role-playing game collection that I've got back. The truly creative people are not always business oriented. Extremely true. Extremely true. But sometimes they can find partners who are. Yeah, that's also extremely important. That's an extremely important discussion to have there as well. That it's actually rather rare, I believe, in order to be able to do both effectively. If you were an extremely creative person who was trying to create stories, or you were trying to create movies or web shows or whatever it is, the creative side of things is very different than the business side of things. It's very different. And I know someone personally who, is in the situation of being a very intense creative. This person can create all kinds of things, has all kinds of ideas, and just brilliant ideas, stories, worlds, mainly involved in the story side of things, but had also done game development in the past and things like that. Just brilliant, but has not been able to manifest those ideas in the world. And I consider that very tragic, because his situation is the reason that I realized we have why the system exists. Because even though I've been kind of independently trying to go at things on the internet, working with crowdfunding, trying to develop my own things, do self-publishing, all of that. Hey, go out, do it independently, do it yourself. That's kind of the way that I've been doing it. That is not the route for everyone. And the more that I do that, the more that I realize why the system exists. So I'm not anti-system by any means. There are negatives to the system, and of course, we can talk about that. But as soon as you start to do it yourself, you realize why the system exists. And when I'm talking about the system here, I'm talking about, well, there's a publisher over here, and this publisher publishes, let's use novels, let's use books. This publisher publishes books, right? And then in order to talk to the publisher, you have to have an agent. And then connected to the agent is you, the author, right? And of course, that could be novel publishing, that could be board game publishing, it could be any type of publishing. And of course, somebody, and it's most people who are authors or other creatives, whether that's an author, a board game designer, or whatever, will go, hey, why am I giving my great novel or board game idea to a publisher? They're going to take a lot of the money, and they're going to give me some smaller chunk of that as a royalty. Why would I do that? Why don't I just self-publish this and keep all of the money? Well, it's because going through everything that has to do with publishing is very difficult, very hard. And you're going to have a lot of learning to go along the way, and everything, if it works out, if you're ever able to get it to work out and learn and actually make it successful. But you know what you're going to have to do in order to do that and make it successful? You're going to have to learn a lot of business things. You're going to have to do a lot of business and activities that are not part of what we're calling here our core creative time, right? You're not going to be writing novels. Every minute that you spend in administration and business administration is not writing your novel or making your board game or programming your computer game or whatever it is, the creative thing that you're trying to do, right? It's taking you away from that. And you may end up resenting that. You're like, listen, I'm just trying to write novels. Why am I trying to run a whole publishing company? Maybe I shouldn't be. And maybe you shouldn't be. Maybe that's absolutely true. You need to have an agent who is going to send that material over to a publisher. So that's why I was talking about my friend that I know who is extremely creative, but not business oriented, like you're talking about here. The system, he never got connected to the system, but he should have. He was the primary candidate for the system because he needed an agent. He had all these brilliant ideas. He needed an agent to take them and shop them around to publishers. And also the agent communicates information back to you. If you're sitting there as an author, for instance, and you're saying, I've got this great idea for this children's book. I've got this great idea for this young adult book. And I've got this idea for an adult novel, whatever, let's say. The agent should be able to tell you, oh, nobody is looking for any adult novels right now. The market is saturated with adult novels. That's over. Everybody is asking me, do I have children's stories? That information should be communicated from the publisher to the agent and then to the author. And then the author should go, oh, okay, well, that gives me some direction about which one of these things I'm supposed to do, right? Then I'll not do the adult book since I can't sell that. You're telling me that people are begging you for the children's one. Let me do the children's one. So that's communication that should be going both ways, right? And then the creative person, the author or the game designer or whatever, gets to spend all of their time, if that's the most productive use of their time, in their creative activity. So that's the system working. If the system were working, that's the way it would go. Publishers who do all the business side of things, the authors or designers or creatives that do all of the creative side of things, and then this intermediary agent that is communicating information back and forth between those two. And, the agent should be getting information from the publisher and looking at their many clients to find the right thing to fit that slot. And then the creator should be sending material to the agent who is finding the right slot at different publishers, right? That's how that should go. So the way, I'm not anti-system. When you look at that, you go, oh, that would be a great system, because, wouldn't it be great if you were a game designer or you were an author and all you had to do during the day for your 8 or 10 hours during the day was nothing but your core creative time? What could you do? Probably, it might be pretty incredible, right? But in order to do that, you got to be wired into the system. And then you also have to understand, well, now why is it that I only get a certain percentage of the royalties on my creative product? Well, it's because there's all the other stuff that goes on that you will become very quickly acquainted with if you try to self-publish, right? You got to do layout, you got to do the graphic design, you've got to do the art direction, you've got to commission artists if you're doing some kind of layout, you got to worry with all of the physical manufacturing, you've got to talk to physical manufacturers, you've got to approve proofs, you've got to revise proofs, you got to, if you're doing a physical product, you've got to worry with worldwide shipping logistics, you got to deal with freight, you got to deal with your warehousing, you got to deal with your fulfillment at the end of that. I mean, that's a lot of stuff, right? That's a lot of stuff. That's not your core creative stuff. So a lot of people, and I've noticed this too, I've got some friends who are like, well, I'm going to do this independently. And then they encounter all of that. And they only do it once. And then they're like, I'm not doing this anymore. And I'm like, I don't blame you. I've been through it multiple times. I don't blame you for not doing it again. You went through it, you realized, oh my God, that's a lot of work and it sucks. Not doing it. Now I should connect to the system, or potentially one potential solution. One potential solution is to quit. The other solution is to, well, now I'm going to connect with the system. I'm going to accept a lower royalty rate, but then I'm outsourcing everything else that has to do with, it's not the core creative part of this. When I've got the, Game of Thrones, the Song of Ice and Fire game over here by Simon. Do you know how many emails George R.R. Martin gets if somebody gets their board game, their Song of Ice and Fire board game, and it's accidentally missing a part and an extra part needs to be dispatched? That would be zero. That would be zero emails that George R.R. Martin has to deal with because there's a missing miniature in somebody's board game accidentally. Simon deals with all of that. So how much money on a per box basis does George R.R. Martin make on the Song of Ice and board game boxes? I have no idea. It's probably not a tremendous amount, right? But on the other hand, that box gets to exist. He is making money and he has to deal with none. That would be zero things that have to do with publishing and customer service and shipping and everything else, right? And then you start to think, well, gee, that would be a good deal. I will make less money on a per box basis, but man, I'll be able to create every day. And then you realize, okay, if you want to make a living just being a creator, you need to be connected to the publishers and you need to create a lot. Yeah, you have one board game. If you're doing but one board game, are you going to be able to make a living and then retire off one board game? No. But if you are just the designer and you are connected with publishers, you might need to, then you can take that time, start designing another game to sell to publishers, and then another one. And then if you have 20, 30, 40, or 50 games, then, you're making a smaller royalty on all of them, but you've designed 50 games, and all of a sudden now you're making a living and you've got money, right? So, right, yeah. Whether it's independent or whether it's self-publishing, man, it's a complicated decision. Let's see here. I have another topic here, but I've been going, it says here for an hour and 10 minutes. This has been a great discussion. It doesn't feel like an hour and 10 minutes. I like these wind downs because I think they go really smoothly and things like that. So I've got another topic, but I think I will save that. And that's the relationship with work. It kind of flows right off of this one. But I think that we'll talk about what your relationship with work should be in another video. Has this been useful to you? Has this been a good conversation? I think it has been. I've just kind of been ranting. But I hope it's been useful to you. And it is the case that in 12 minutes, I've got a phone call with the video call with the action figure manufacturer. So I do need to take that, and I need at least a few minutes to sort of mentally prepare and see where we are. Yeah, it's in 10 minutes. So I'd probably better go. I will see you for the morning grind in the morning, and then we will talk about our relationship with work tomorrow evening. Keith says, I've enjoyed it. Thank you, Keith. I really appreciate your being here. Very also insightful comments. I really appreciate it. I'm always glad when you're here. So, all right, then we will end then with Goodnight Sword, which is Tales of Rabavania, the very first book that's in the Tales of Rabavania. For the youngest audience, take off of Goodnight Moon. You will see Sir Merrick and Sir Bors, two knights by the fireplace, in this book, which I'm trying to get their action figures manufactured right now. So I am going to leave everybody with that. Here it is. We'll wrap up. I've enjoyed it, really did. I will see you in the morning, the morning grind, and then back here again tomorrow. And also in the Discord. Be in the Discord.
Narrated
Thank you, everybody.
by
It's been
Brianna Da
fantastic.
Silva. Part of the Tales of Rabavania. Goodnight Sword. Goodnight Gourd. Goodnight guards who keep us all safe. Goodnight dagger. And the iron hauberk. Goodnight cheese. Goodnight keys. Goodnight elm. And goodnight helm. Goodnight squire. And goodnight liar. Goodnight shield. And good night to the lance only the gallant wield. Good night banner. And good night jewel. Good night gruel. Good night knights. And good night to the old soldier who says time's been cruel. Good night, maiden fair, whose favor I bear. Good night, rabbits everywhere.